you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Okay, good morning, and welcome to the September the 26th, 2023 edition of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we thank you for tuning in for today's program. Now, to get in contact with the program, many of you already know the drill, but I have to repeat it because we have new people that are listening to the program or who need to know the numbers to call in. So here they are. 516-453-9921 is the number that you call to get into the program. Now, you can just listen if you want to, or if you have a question or a brief comment, then press the number 1 button and you will get in line. Give the call screener your name so that I can properly give you an introduction, and then you can ask Mr. Fuller your question. If you do that, please, ma'am, please, sir, please be brief and concise so that Mr. Fuller can understand the question. Sometimes you have a lot of different things you want to add to it, and it can get convoluted, and we don't want that. So just ask the question, and then give Mr. Fuller a chance to answer your question. The second way that you can get in contact with this show, oh, by the way, if you're a new caller, first-time caller, make sure you tell the call screener that you are a new caller. They will alert me of that, and then we can make sure that you can be heard. The second way to get in is you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, MRBOBBY, @gmail.com. Now, when you do that, your Gmail does go into a rotation, and it comes up whenever it comes up. At some point, it will be read. I cannot tell you for sure when. Sometimes they pop right on up. I don't know, but we'll see. But you can do that, and then Mr. Fuller will make suggestions to your inquiry. And, of course, the last thing that you can do to join the program is go to the chat room. Just go to blogtalkradio.com, and then you want to click on programs. And after you get to programs, then you click that, and then there will be a listing of shows. And you want to get the Produce Justice show. You click on that, and then the chat room is available through that window. So that is how you get in contact with the show. And I might have to repeat that again because people come in the second hour, and so they may not know. But anyway, that's what you do. You regulars already know that, so no, it's not a problem there. Okay, let me see. I think that's all the house cleaning I have to do. Yes, this one here. Now, the books that will be discussed on the program, the main book is the book by Mr. Fuller that he's written, and at some point in the program, we'll get him to speak about the book. But you can get all the books and the materials and podcasts and all information at producejustice.com. That is producejustice.com. And as to my knowledge, all the books are in, so there will not be any delays or anything like that. So you're able to do that. Okay, I think that is all out the way, so let's do this then. First of all, let me say good morning to you, Mr. Fuller. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
All right. Now, for those who are new to the program and for those who are regular listeners, we have a segment that we try to start off with every program, at least on this program. It's called The Thoughts and Expressions on the Mind of Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, today being the 26th of the month of September 2023, what is on your mind this morning, sir?
A continuation of what I was talking about at the beginning of last week's program, last Tuesday. And the focus there was what the focus for every person, in my opinion, should be, as of this minute, wherever that person is on the planet. And that should be, and I'll quote it because I wrote it down at that time, in all things for the rest of your life, say and do only what produces the most constructive results. And people call in and for some time, every now and then, they say, Mr. Fuller talks about black people's problems, and he seems to be bad-mouthing black people, and he doesn't come up with any solutions. He's very vague when it comes to solutions, and it's very frustrating, and why bother to even talk about the problem over and over and over again if you don't have, he's supposed to be giving some ideas for solutions, but it looks like he never gets around to it. Well, the whole book that I've written is about solutions, even if I'm just talking about what the problem is. And that was my intention, but it may not be coming across that way, and that would be my failure. So I'm going to give this quote again as a solution to whatever problems there are out there, whatever problems you have. You're on a bus right now, you're driving your car and you're stopped at the red light, or you're moving, you're a truck driver, and you're moving along the highway. You got up early, 2 o'clock in the morning, when you start driving your truck off the lot. And now you're on the highway making a long-distance run. And you're thinking about things. Well, along with your thinking, this quote should be the focus for everybody on the planet, white, non-white, male, female, etc., etc. In all things, for the rest of your life. You're here on the planet Earth. You're going through motions, and this motion collectively is called life. You are alive in all things for the rest of your life. You have two things, time and energy, because that's what life is, time and energy. In all things, for the rest of your life, say and do only, emphasize only, what produces the most constructive results. Now, you're doing something right now.
think about what you're doing. Somewhere right now, somebody's loading up a pistol, a firearm. And they are intending to use it sometime today. They have it scheduled. Somebody's doing that right this moment. You have somebody driving a truck. You have somebody loading a pistol. The question is, what's going to be the constructive result of the person who is loading the pistol and the person who is driving a long-haul truck, tractor trailer? Which is going to be the most constructive? That's one illustration. Because wherever you are on the planet Earth, here on this day, on 2023, in September, the 26th of September, it's another important day because you're here and you're doing something. Now, all day long, think about whatever it is you're doing or planning to do. Because thinking is a part of getting things done. But what constructive result is going to come from it? Because everything that you do and everything that you say, saying is a form of doing. And everything that you're planning to do, that's doing and saying, is supposed to produce a constructive result according to constructive logic. So you don't want anything that you're using your time and energy to do to be non-constructive. That's worldwide. It applies to everybody. So that gives you some type of what? Focus, which is what you should have. You just don't get up in the morning and stretch and then say, well, what am I going to do today? And that's it. But that is a start, because that's a question, a very valid question. What am I going to do today? I have time and energy. What is available to me to do? And make sure that whatever it is, whatever conclusion you come to by asking yourself that question, what's going to be the constructive result? Everybody today, right this minute, if you haven't done it before, say for the rest of my life, because my life is limited, I want to make sure that everything that I do and say produces a constructive result. And that applies to Neely Fuller, too. Mm-hmm. He's doing something right now. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to produce a constructive result, or a whole lot of constructive results. Otherwise, logically speaking, what is he doing here? Here, I mean, in the universe. That's what I have to say this morning. I'm ready for questions about anything that comes up.
All righty. All right, 516-453-9921 is the number if you would have a question. Before we go on here, let's go back just a minute. Last week got a lot of Gmails concerning last week's program, which I would say about over 99% were all positive, and it was about the statements you made in the beginning, and basically Freedom Culture has hit it on the Freedom Culture Tech. Let me get that correct. Hit it on the head. Said the conclusion episode, which was last week, is legendary. How Mr. Fuller hit on so many points. Thank you for producing this timeline to create constructive behavior. For those who may not have heard that or missed that, when you spoke about conclusion of conclusions, could you briefly explain what you meant by that, Mr. Fuller?
Right. Well, everything that people do, there should be a conclusion. The system of racism is run on cause and effect. If we do this, a bunch of white people, for example, got together many, many years ago. It might not have been a bunch, it might have been just two. Somebody started it as an idea. It's an invention, political invention, but it's an invention. How to relate to people relations. That's what all politics is about. People relations. And politics is people relations is politics. And every area of activity that people are involved in is political, if it involves at least two people.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that involves two people is political. So, what do people do when they interact with each other? The conclusion is, the best conclusion, logically speaking, is for people to interact, thought, speech, action, one person interacting with another, anywhere on the planet, is supposed to, ideally, come to a conclusion about something. I'm talking to someone, but I want the conclusion of the conclusions. In other words, if I'm talking to someone, at some point, the talk is supposed to produce some type of action, and the action should be what? It should be constructive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I start out with that idea in mind, since that's what is on my mind, and the other person that I'm talking to agrees that our interaction is supposed to produce something that's constructive, well, that's the conclusion of the conclusions of that activity.
Yes, sir.
With somebody thought of something, start telling somebody else what the thoughts were, and then they put it into action. Whatever that action is going to be, driving a truck or loading a pistol,
mm-hmm.
is going to result in something that's constructive or non-constructive. There's two ways to go. There's nothing in between. Everything that you say is going to conclude in something that happened that was what? Constructive or non-constructive. Driving a truck, if it's for a constructive purpose, most likely it's going to wind up producing some activities, further activities, or no more activities, which even when something is stationary, that is not a conclusion if it's a job that's completed, because it's still alive. Whatever it is, rocks are alive. A drop of water is alive. A grain of sand is alive. And you can say, well, no, it's just sitting there. That grain of sand is just sitting there in the desert. It serves a purpose. It's alive. That's the conclusion of conclusions. For that purpose that it's serving. And that's why I use that expression.
Yes, sir.
Codified expression. Conclusion of conclusion. And when it comes to these creatures that we call people, and they interact with the universe around them, they are producing something that's either going to be conclusive in a way of being something that's constructive or non-constructive.
Okay.
That's what's on my mind.
All righty. Well, that was from last week.
And I'm trying to have other people think about it, because there's so much stuff going on around you all the time. And you're riding the subway and you're looking out the window and you're saying, what is this all about? Where am I going? And all these other people, I mean, pushing and shoving and whatnot. And what is this? I mean, am I in some kind of zoo or what? I mean, does anything make sense? Don't seem like it does. I hear all these voices, people talking at me. And like the song says, people talking at me. I don't know what they're saying, what they're doing. What is my life all about? This thing that they call life. Well, it's about either doing something constructive or doing something non-constructive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a question. And so you figure it out, and it shouldn't take you long to figure it out. And always try to sort it out by choosing to do what you see to be the most constructive thing about this particular situation.
All righty.
Whatever that situation is.
Whatever it is, yes, sir. Absolutely. Okay. All righty. Let's see here. We'll do this here to finish up. Ross Amin had written this. This is a sort of a replay on what was written, but to get a more clearer answer. It says that if a black male, now this is a repeat, so some of you have already heard this, but this is the conclusion of it. If a black male has his own shelter/apartment, Mr. Fuller, and a black female has her own, when they meet for any constructive communication, sexual play, or intercourse, Mr. Fuller, is it codified to not do this at the black female's place of shelter and rather do this at his? Now, if so, why or why not? The black male and female are not in a so-called marriage or care unit contract.
I heard.
This is about sexual play. And he says, is it codified not to do this at the black female's place of shelter and rather do it at his? If so, why or why not?
Well, it comes down to what is the most constructive result. That's why I emphasize this all this morning so far. Constructive results. Those two words should be in your mind. So whatever the situation is, the eighth area of activity, which is sex, whatever you're doing sexually, is it producing the most constructive result in 1,000,000 years under the same circumstances?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. What you're making a choice. So the choice is something constructive or something non-constructive. It might wind up being a third choice that you hadn't considered, and that is, well, considering who we are and what our ambitions are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, maybe we shouldn't have sexual intercourse at all. Or maybe we should have a whole lot more than we have been having. But the code says, well, as an example, and everything in the code that gives an example is just that, an example. And the example given in the code is that, well, time and place, it didn't mention that, but that becomes a part of the code if that is the issue. But the code says no more than twice every 7 days. As a suggestion, because Neely has not written a book. That's the conclusion of conclusions. You'll only know that if what is in the book is applied in such a manner that everything turns out to be a constructive result.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Would that produce a constructive result?
Depends on the circumstances. Depends on all of the questions that's ever going to be asked between those two people, for example, have been asked. And that's in the code book, examples of these questions that should be asked.
Yeah.
People don't ask and answer enough questions before they get into a situation that where the aim is, at the time, having sexual intercourse.
Yes.
You should first, according to the code, have dozens and dozens and dozens, maybe, if it's going to produce the most constructive result, dozens of questions.
Yeah,
So
I think you
no
had...
questions, no
go ahead,
questions
I'm sorry. Yeah,
are unanswered. You should never be in bed with anybody until the questions. Now, this is as a suggestion, the best suggestion to get the most constructive results. The more the two people know about each other prior to sexual intercourse, the better.
Okay. Because I think
regardless of where it's going to happen and when.
Yeah.
The more they know about each other, the better.
Okay.
That's the theory. And that's the suggestion that's in the Codified book.
Yeah, I think you had, 130 questions on there, and Libby ran said...
And it might be 10 times that many.
Okay, all right. All right, no specific number. Let's do this. Let's break here. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and we thank you for listening to the program. To get in contact with the show, just do like my brother from Youngstown, Tariq did. Just call this number, 516-453-9921. And if you have a question, just press the number 1 button and you will get in line, and we'll get your question or suggestion of a question answered by Mr. Fuller. Okay? You can do that. All the books are in. Just go to producejustice.com. You can get the books right there, all of them in past programs. You can do that. By the way, if you're a first-time caller, make sure you give the call screener your name so that I can give you a proper introduction and introduce you to the rest of the world here. The chat room is available. Go to blogtalkradio.com. Make sure that you click on where it says programs. When you click on that bad boy, then shows will come up, and then you hit that, and then the chat room window is there, and you're able to get in there. Okay. Yeah. Black to Death says the code book has 200 questions and another 130 questions as well. Okay. Talking about before you get in relationship, or particularly a sexual relationship with somebody, you need to ask questions you need to know. Very, very good. All right, Black to Death, I like that. All right, let's go to the phone lines. We're going to go to Tariq in Youngstown. We refer to it as a yo. As long as he didn't go to Austintown Finch. That's a joke. Anyway, Tariq, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Mr. Bobby, good morning. Mr. Fuller, no, actually, I graduated from South High in 1984, but I had a lot of friends. My dad actually went to Fitch when he came up here from Tennessee in the 30s.
Okay. All right. What's your question for Mr. Fuller, sir?
Okay, Mr. Fuller, I'm going to ask you one thing real quick before I get to the question. I know a lot of people that are truck drivers that I introduced your book to them, and they like it so much. A lot of them was wondering, and I believe somebody asked you this question before, is there a way for them to get that in audio version, because they like to listen to it while they're driving? You don't have to answer that now if you don't want to, but that's just the question that I have. But my other question is, I know that you've been following, or maybe not even closely following, because I quit watching sports when I was 18, probably when I went in the Navy, because we just don't own no team, so I don't think it benefits us to keep participating in that process. But I know you've been hearing, or at least seeing what's going on with this Deion Sanders phenomenon. Well, I had some people upset the other day because I said, wait a minute. I said, it's not like he left Jackson State as a powerhouse. You know, we here in Ohio got pretty spoiled because Ohio State has always been competing, and I'm 57. They've been doing that since I was a child. But I told a group of people just the other day, I said, guys, I'm not hating or anything on Deion, but don't you think that the white supremacists already set this up for money, a little fame? I said, so we don't do anything. They don't give us any type of platform without them investigating it first, Mr. Fuller, and finding out how they're going to benefit from it even before we do. So that was my only question, Mr. Fuller. Do you think that this was, I'm sure they looked into their crystal ball and said, yeah, we can get this guy. He's loud, he's flamboyant. This is going to benefit us, even though we know they don't care about him like that. So, Mr. Fuller, can you speak on when they reward us, but it's actually rewarding themselves? And have a good day. And well, my dad has passed away now, or I would have told him as long as he didn't go to Fitch. Mr. Bobby, have a good day.
All right, sir. All righty. Yeah, Mr. Fuller, about the Deion Sanders thing, do you think he's been set up, or the white people are going to benefit from the position that he's in since he left Jackson State University to go to the University of Colorado?
If those white people are white supremacists, they do not intend for a non-white person to do anything of constructive value unless what is being done is going to strengthen the system of white supremacy. That's what white supremacy is about. That's why you have to get rid of that in the process of doing anything. Otherwise, you're going to continue to have people being mistreated. The white supremacist system is against anything that promotes justice. Justice means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's the focus, the conclusion of conclusions. Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help so that you get the most constructive results. That's always should be. Whatever you do, whatever you say, wherever you go, whomever you talk to, whomever you make a contract with, is supposed to produce the most constructive results that are possible to produce. That should be the aim. If it doesn't do that, whether it's in making a football contract or making a contract to kill somebody, does it produce, and is that the best way to produce the most constructive results? That's always the question. When you start out to do anything, so the answers will come automatically to you. I mean, people sit around a table and do the talk. And Mr. Sanders is talking to people, white, non-white. Doesn't make any difference who the person is. After they get through talking, then you can punchline it, the conclusion of conclusions. Okay, we did all this talking for the last 15 hours in 3 days. Is it going to produce the most constructive results when you put all those hours together? And we came to all those conclusions, and or the one conclusion. I mean, that's in this contract. That's in this agreement. What's going to be the constructive result? It's not supposed to be in anything in this contract that's going to be non-constructive. Non-constructive for whom? For everybody. Non-constructive is not anything that's destructive in here. We need to go back and have another meeting or start all over again.
Okay.
Because this is not doesn't look like. It doesn't. It may not. Sometimes we got to find out through the process. But for right now, we got a big question mark on item 6, on item 12. Is there anything here in 6 and 12? It looks like it's going to lead towards something that's not going to be a constructive result. And we ain't acting on nothing until we get an answer to that question. Those 2 items, are they going to produce constructive results? Now, the other 15 items, they have been okay. They're going to produce constructive results. But 6 and 12, we need to go back to the table, or we don't move on nothing. because those non-constructive results are going to poison all the other constructive results. Mm-hmm. And the white supremacists are very good at that. They know how to mix something real tasty, they're experts, with something that's totally poisonous.
Okay. Tariq made a suggestion, and he made a suggestion, and you've addressed it several times, but he said that a lot of people that he communicates with are truck drivers, and he has spoken about your book to them, and a lot of them, according to him, I believe he said that they're very interested, and they would like the book, if it were possible, to be on audio, so that while they're driving, they could listen to your suggestions, for that. Now, have you thought about that? Or I do know that because I've done this, driven in my car and listened to many of your programs by going to producejustice.com and listening to the programs. But have you thought about, since he made that particular suggestion, have you thought about that in that realm?
Absolutely. I've tried to think of every way that I can to get the idea out that black people need a code of thought, speech, and action, the victims of white supremacy. We don't have a code that is tried and true. Code means a number, a set of things that covers everything that we say and do. How we talk to each other, how we talk to white people, how we talk to anybody, and what words are used and not used. That's what we need. The white supremacists have that. That's why they're successful at what they do. They say, hey, we've done that 1,000 years ago, we did that, and it didn't work. And now we fast forward, circumstances have changed, and it does work. It didn't work then because the other things weren't in place. But now it does work. So what they do, code just means you always do what works for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And you forget about tradition and all the like of that, except you don't forget about tradition because you got to remember what didn't work. And whatever black people were doing in what we glorify as our history, it certainly didn't work because it fell under the spell of the system of white supremacy. So we need a brand new code for these times, not sometime 10 million years ago, because circumstances have changed.
Yes, sir.
And we don't seem to understand that at all. We got to go back. We got to go back and hold on. Hold on to what? Slavery? Go back to that? That's our history. And that's still our history.
Yes, sir.
We're living it, if you can call it living, under the system of white supremacy. That's a huge mistake.
Mm-hmm.
On the part of a whole bunch of people. So we don't want the same mistake to just keep on and on and on into infinity. You correct mistakes. That's what codification is about. Correcting mistakes.
Correcting mistakes. Okay.
Rather than glorifying them.
Yeah, glorify them. No, don't want to do that. Okay. Let's go here. This is going to be Ray from Dallas. He writes this, Mr. Fuller. He says, out of the universal laws, why did you, Mr. Fuller, give greater attention to the law of compensation?
Because like it says in the textbook, in the very beginning, you compensate in everything that you do. Compensation means something is missing that shouldn't be. If you should be on a job that you agreed to do, some carpentry work today, and you wake up because you overslept, and you usually, where you are, you walk to work. But now you overslept on this particular day. Stayed up watching television too late. So the alarm goes off, for example, to let you know you overslept. And that backup alarm went off. That's how you know. That's the backup alarm. And I overslept. So you call a taxi. And you got to work on time for the job that you agreed to do. Now, where does compensation come in? You compensated for the time that you lost oversleeping, not by walking because you wouldn't get to work on time, but now you caught a cab and you got to work on time. That's just a crude illustration, but it explains why I use the term compensation. You compensate all day long. You compensate for being at work, at the time you should be there, by a vehicle called a cab, rather than your legs walking.
Okay.
Because you wouldn't get there on time if you walked today.
Yes, sir.
Ordinarily, if you had gotten up an hour or two earlier, you could have walked and got your exercise before you got to work.
Okay.
Because you sit behind a desk all day. So that's why you start walking.
Okay.
But in order to do that, you had to go to bed at night to compensate for the sleep that you need.
Yes. Compensate, yes.
So that when you got to work, you were work, and which is what most likely is going to happen now. You're going to be sleeping at that desk, and you're not going to get your work done, which means you got to work now. Take your paperwork to your place of residence that night to catch up, to compensate.
Compensate.
Compensation means you make up for what's missing.
Make up for what's missing. Okay.
That's why I call that's the reason I call what I'm doing the compensatory code. We're missing a thing called justice, guaranteeing that nobody is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And that ain't happening nowhere.
That ain't happening, is it? Okay. He concludes this, Mr. Fuller, under the law of compensation, what compensation is due to the white supremacists?
The white supremacists will get their compensation by practicing justice. Right now, they're call themselves making up for what's missing, and what's missing is justice, but they claim that what they're doing is just and is not. So I would have to ask them and everybody else, particularly victims of white supremacy, what's constructive about what you are doing where I'm concerned? That would be the question. One of the questions of maybe 1,000, but that would be one of them. That's one of them that I would ask. How can you say that what you are doing, practicing white supremacy, is just? Because that's what you're doing right this minute. You haven't stopped doing it, even though a lot of you claim, oh, you're talking about slavery. I mean, white supremacy is slavery. Slavery didn't end in whatever the year you said it did, 16 this and 18 that. No. It's alive and well, and it should never existed in the first place. They say, well, it accomplished a lot. It didn't accomplish justice. What do you mean a lot? Well, we got a lot of things done. Yes, you can get a lot of things done by enslaving somebody, but is it the correct thing to do? Could you have gotten the same thing done by practicing justice? Seriously, rather than just talking about it. Seriously. These are questions, because all problems are solved through questions and answers. That doesn't change. And that's a compensatory act.
Mm-hmm.
If we ever produce justice, that will be a great expression of the law of compensation.
Of the law of compensation. Okay.
Replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. That's compensatory big time.
Big time. Okay. Now, speaking of that, in the remaining few moments that we have in the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show, I need you to talk about your book, particularly to those who are first-time listeners or who want to know about the book. What would you say about your book that you can get by going to producejustice.com, Mr. Fuller?
Yeah, well, first of all, what is the book for? It's supposed to help the individual person who is a victim, who perceives him or her, somebody else to tell them, even Neely Fuller. Just look at yourself and your status in the world and say, what is my status? Status of what kind? Status in this world. Who tells me what to do more than anybody else, and I better do it? How about that as a question? Because all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. And so I came to the conclusion, people who are classified as white, and who also, not only that, they have that classification, which somebody said that that's a classification called race membership. Somebody said it. Otherwise, we couldn't be talking about it. I wouldn't be talking about it, I don't think. And they say, well, if you're a member of the white race, you tell people of the so-called black race or people of color, if you want to lump them all together as a race, then the people of the white race is supposed to be the dictators of people over the non-white race, collectively. Black, brown, red, yellow, and white is a power source, brain power, that causes all things to happen that are powerful, other than the creator of the universe itself. And somebody gel that into a slogan called the system of white supremacy. And so my book is to say that this system of governing people should not exist and never should have existed and need to be put out of business. Either they go out of business on their own or pressure should be put in whatever ways they can by the victims, for sure, of this system to abolish the system and replace it, compensate for that abolishment by having a better system, which presumably would be justice. So my book is about replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Because if you don't do that, you can't do anything on the planet that ultimately makes the most sense. We are here wasting the time and energy that the creator of time and energy has given all of us, people who are classified as white and people who are classified as non-white, because it's an evil system. It's not evil when it comes to producing things that make people more comfortable. The system is excellent for that. But it misuses people. And things and people should be treated correctly, because that's the ideal. You don't misuse things and you don't misuse people. Things are here, people are here.
Mm-hmm.
You don't become experts in the manipulation of things and you become completely destructive or even partly destructive when it comes to people. The white supremacist system does not allow people to do anything that's not in the line of mistreating people based on color of all things. So you're not supposed to mistreat anybody for any reason, because there is no reason for mistreatment in a world that's designed where every person is treated constructively. Now the book, or the textbook for victims of white supremacy, is to compensate by eliminating the greatest form of mistreatment of people ever invented. And that's the system of white supremacy. It not only destroys people's bodies, all kinds of stuff that substitutes for food, all kinds of nonsense that substitutes for sex, mistreatment of every kind you can name, glorifying killing. Nobody remembers their doctor's name, but you can remember. You might not remember George Floyd, but you remember Pretty Boy Floyd. Glorifying a gangster. Turn on your television, and that's excellent technology. When you look at a television, you're looking at some technology that's off the hook.
Okay. All righty. Well, we have come to the conclusion of the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. So we thank you for listening, particularly if you have to depart for this week. But for those who will stay, we have another hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, and we are glad to do that. Mr. Fuller, in the last 20 seconds, the last word for you in this first hour.
Same for how I started it off. I'll end up even for the next hour, and that is produce constructive results. Have that as your entire focus, and have that as a question for anything you see people doing or saying.
Okay.
Is this going to produce a constructive result? Yes or no? And if so, tell me how.
Okay. Okay, that concludes the first hour. Stay tuned for the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., which will commence in 5 seconds. All righty. Welcome back to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we are so happy that you have decided to tune in to the program. You know the rules, but here we go. To call in and to have your questions answered, or even to give a short VGQ, which Mr. Fuller may tell you what that means. All you have to do is call this number, which is 516-453-9921, and press the number 1 button so that the call screener can acknowledge you and then put your name up, which I'm glad you just did, Ryan, in Buffalo. I'm very glad for that. But that helps me to identify you, and then you can get your questions answered by Mr. Fuller. So please be concise. Please be clear so that he can understand that. For the first-time caller, make sure you tell the call screener that, and they will alert me that you are a first-time caller, and I will get you on here. We make sure we get all first-time callers on, so don't have to worry about that. Okay, now, you can also do this. If you don't want to use that method, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, MRBOBBY, @gmail.com. And at some point in time, maybe not today, but at some point in time, I will get to that Gmail and read it, and then I will alert you when the Gmail is read so that you can hear that. And lastly, you can join the chat room. And all you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com, and then you want to click on programs. You do that, and then once that menu is up, then you want to go to shows. And there are many shows up there, but you want the Produce Justice show. You click on that, and the window for the chat room is available for you to get in, and you could get in there into the chat room. You know the chat rules, and if you don't know the chat room, trust me on this one, the chatters will let you know about that. They will do that. Okay, books that you can get from Mr. Fuller are at producejustice.com. Also, past shows are on there, and any upcoming events, go to producejustice.com. That is producejustice.com. Okay, let's go to the phone lines, and we're going to go way up into western New York, Buffalo. And Ryan, get ready, Ryan. I'm getting ready to put this cursor right over there for you. Let's see here. So we can get this. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, Ryan, good morning. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, chat room. Shout out to Freedom Culture Technologies. Mr. Fuller, real quick, what do you say to individuals who don't believe that producing justice is obtainable?
Oh, well.
And I'll take my call off the air.
I'll just simply say is that I'll ask a question. Is that true? It's always questions and answers. Questions and answers will always take everybody right where they should be, because it has to do with one word, truth. Now, that's either true or false. So all I have to do is just find out, is that true? Is it true that justice cannot be produced? That's impossible. And I have concluded so far, conclusion of conclusions, that's not true. Why fight for something that's impossible to produce? and you're trying to produce it. Something's impossible. Well, I've heard that it is impossible, for a person to be able to fly through the air when the kind of person didn't have wings. I heard that. And then I heard later on, after people had been flying for a while on a vehicle that had wings, or something called a vehicle, I heard during World War II, people in the barbershop saying, and what they call an airplane will never go 400 miles an hour. That they're lying about that. A P-51 Mustang, what they call a fighter plane, ain't gonna be no 400 miles an hour. The wings would fly off. I mean, it just wouldn't hold up under that kind of pressure. Well, 400 miles an hour now in the year 2023, 400 miles an hour, a vehicle called a plane or an aircraft can't do 400 miles an hour. Well, it turned out that wasn't true. See, so a lot of people have said that a lot of things couldn't be done. How you gonna see somebody and they cross town or 2,000 miles away, and you can look at an image of them in a box sitting in your corner? That was impossible at one time. No, somebody got to go to the mailbox and drop off a photograph. And somebody even before then said, photograph? You can draw a picture of a person. You got the person sitting in front of you. But snapping a picture? Something called a picture? In a box? And the image of that person is going to be in that box? And all you did was just flip a little switch on a little box in your hand, and they call that thing a camera. And then later on, you can have a picture of your grandmother long after she's gone. And you can look at that thing that you flipped that switch in a little box, and a piece of paper came out, and you put some stuff on it. Now, they said that was impossible. No, you see your grandmother, you're going to see her, and you ain't going to know nothing about what she looked like if you wasn't alive during the time that she was. Or she was alive, during the time that you came along. People just talk about her, but they couldn't see no image of her. They'll describe what she looked like as best they could. But you can't have nothing that you flicked a little switch and you can show a picture of exactly what she looked like. That's impossible. See, a whole bunch of the stuff in answer to the question has been saying is impossible. I'm saying not likely. Because people thought of the idea, the concept of having a whole world in which nobody is mistreated by anybody, ever. But that's weird. Somebody mistreated a person? You got to be kidding. That's the kind of world we should be in now. And I believe it. I believe you can have people actually saying that and mean it, and it'll be true. And it's called justice. Justice means nobody is mistreated under any circumstance. That'll be unheard of. That'd be so far back in history. 2023, that's the way it should be right now. You're telling me that... No, you got to be joking. People used to mistreat people, but it ain't that way now. That's the way we should be talking now in answer to the question. No, It's not impossible. I've seen too many things happen that a lot of people said were impossible during my existence. And I've seen too many things happen that 100 or 200 or 500 years ago said it couldn't be done.
Alrighty.
There's a cliche saying for it. I'd like to add this. And that is, somebody said, if you can conceive it, and justice is a conception, of course, it's never been in recorded history. It's never existed. If you can conceive it and you believe it, it can be done. I've heard that said by somebody, some poet or somebody. I don't know who said it. He said, but if you can think about it, the very fact that the Creator of you allowed you to think about it, you can do it. Otherwise, the Creator is not going to allow you to do it because your mind is not going to stretch that far. The Creator has limits for people. And there's a thing called a mind. So there is a theory that goes along with that. And that is, if a person can think about it, is allowed to think about it, and it is an allowance by whatever created that person, then that person can probably do it one way or another.
Okay. All righty. All right, from Buffalo. Ryan, thank you so much. Let's see here. See, this person, Mr. Fuller, wants to remain anonymous. So this is a VGQ. And for those who are new to the program, Mr. Fuller, will you quickly explain what is a VGQ before I read this?
VGQ means Victims Guaranteed Qualification. And
literally,
what does that mean? What that means is, under the definitions in the Word Guide, which is the book that you can get by going to producejustice.com, VGQ means you're a victim of white supremacy. That's the V, victim. And I'm having a senior moment here.
You're on the G now, VGQ. You're on the G now.
Victim qualification. That's the last letter.
Yeah.
That second letter, I've gotten so used to this saying VGQ. Yes. What? I don't remember what
I think you put guaranteed.
Guaranteed. That's it. Victim's guaranteed qualification. I made that up, but I use this VGQ to, for people who are already familiar with it. But victim's guaranteed qualification. Now, how that came about as a compensatory thing is that black people always, and I've been accused of it, we go at each other. By go at, I mean being combative. And the things that we say about racism, we wind up combating each other. And so VGQ was, as a compensatory thing, to make it up for what's missing, to have a civil conversation. That's what it's designed to do. Conversation where we treat each other as best we can in a just manner, in a correct manner. VGQ means you're guaranteed the qualification as a victim for saying anything that you want to say about race, racism, or counter-racism. Counter-racism means how to fight against racism. We become combative with each other about that. So I said, we need something to put a break on that altogether, to abolish that. So I'll say that and I'm saying this because I believe this will have a constructive effect. If I say something like Neely Fuller, this is an example of the use of BGQ, and I say I don't believe in that. I don't believe black people should be talking about reparations, and so the black person who hears me say that should say, well, I believe in talking about it and doing it. Well, under VGQ, you should say that. I should say what I said. I think we should just forget about all that reparation stuff and all, getting a paycheck and all. Just forget about it and go on and do your thing, all right? Now, the person who says, no, I will do reparations and we should get that paycheck. Well, the black person who says that, say, for example, Neely Fuller's opposed to it or don't agree with it, and the black person who's saying, I'm all for it, let both people say that because they're both victims. And so they can make a choice of any kind and speak about that choice based on the way they see it. One person is for it, another person is against it. And so you stand up and say it. And so there are people who are saying that Neely Fuller's book ain't worth nothing. Really, one of the first people I encountered about my own book said that about my book. I couldn't find nothing in that book to help me do nothing. I don't see why you wrote it, And I said, that's the way it's supposed to work. You give your opinion of this book. See, and that was an eye-opener for him, because nobody ever said that, because he was the type of person, it seems to me, that disagreed with a whole lot of people about a whole lot of things, not just that. So he gave his opinion of my book. But I said, you're entitled to that, You can say what you want to say about anything, your opinion of anything, And people who agree with it, and people who don't. But I can't say that you shouldn't say it. Exactly. You say whatever you want to say. That's the victim's guaranteed qualification. You have that qualification.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. Well, thank you, Mr. Fuller, for that complete explanation of VGQ. Anyway, Anonymous wrote this, and then we'll go to you, Helen, in New York. But anyway, Anonymous wrote this. It says, Mr. Fuller, in regards to the misguided woman that called into the show a while ago using profanity, I'm not sure that she understands that words have power and vibrations. There is a Japanese scientist named Masaru Emoto who studied the molecular structure of water and rice after he spoke kind, loving words and profane words to them. The water and the rice that got kind words look like beautiful geometric patterns under the microscope. But the water and rice that got, quote, curse, into quote, words look like vomit under the microscope. Mr. Fuller, words are more important than she knows. Best regards, and then it was blank. She was speaking of the woman that called in a few programs ago and did use some choice words. She wasn't the only one, or this person wasn't the only one that really objected to the kind of language that this person used over the airways, and then your response was classic, to that response, and then took it as a learning moment because you indicated to let her speak, which, anyway, that's what you did, and she hasn't called in since then. But words are important. Mr. Fuller, before we go to Helen B., your thoughts on words. What are your thoughts on words, Mr. Fuller?
Well, I started this program about and ended it, and I did that last week too. In all things, for the rest of your life, say, S-A-Y, say, S-A-Y, and do, D-O, only what produces the most constructive results. Now, a few weeks ago, a month or whatever it was, when a lady was using the term MF over and over again on this program.
Yes.
The question is what you're saying, lady, does it produce the most constructive results? When you call somebody that, or when you use that in a conversation, does it produce the most constructive results? That's a saying, that term. Is it possible to use other words that will produce the most constructive results? Or is that the expression you should use in every conversation that will produce the most constructive results? For whatever purpose you are trying to produce, what is it you're trying to do? If you I mean, what's the goal?
Yeah, the 4 months on that one.
And see, all you got to do is just keep asking questions. Mm-hmm. What is your goal? Yeah. What is your goal? Are you going to name somebody that, or what? What is it? And in order to do what?
Exactly. I was thinking.
All you got to do is just keep asking questions. Questions and answers. It's the laws of the universe. Will always take everybody right where they need to be.
I was thinking about the 4 once. Maybe that should have been inserted. That was a good place to insert that. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And so forth.
That's it. See, page 171 and 172.
Yes, sir.
First off, everybody on the planet, you start with yourself. What is it I want to do? Everybody has wants. Everybody. Every creature, not just people, every animal. Every animal wants to do something. That elephant wants to do something. What does the elephant want to do? Get across the river. How do you know that that's what the elephant wants to do? Because the elephant is crossing the river on its own. Now, it might be a question of why does the elephant want to cross the river? That's another question. You can ask the elephant, but if you can understand the elephant's language, or you can probably just sit there by the river bank and watch that elephant cross the river up to his head and keep his snorkel up and gets to the other side. Then you see the elephant go to the other side and immediately starts eating some type of grass that's on the other side. Mm-hmm. Well, now, you can come to some kind of conclusion. Oh, the elephant wanted to cross the river, not because the elephant enjoyed crossing the river. It's because the elephant saw food, nourishment, on conclusion.
Logical. Yes, sir. Okay. All righty.
The constructive result for the elephant.
All right. Okay. Before we go to Helen B., and I'm getting ready to come to you, Helen B., I just want to thank those in the chat room for not taking the bait. You did a beautiful job. That's the only thing I'm going to say. All right, Helen B., get ready. You've been waiting, and here we go. Helen B., let me get it over there. Okay, Helen B., you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Hello, good morning. Peaceful greetings. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My question for Mr. Neely Fuller, how did he come up with the logic that so-called Chinese people are non-white? And I'd like to stay on the line. Thank you.
Okay, all righty. Mr. Fuller?
Because somebody told me that. I didn't know that green was green until somebody told me. And who does the telling? In whatever language. So when I come into the world, people present me with a whole bunch of words. Once I'm breathing, then words start coming. That's how it works. People told me what black is. I didn't know. Brown, purple, yellow. They say that people, Chinese, are yellow. Now, who said that? Who originated that in English language? Who's the first person to use the word yellow and applied it to people who call themselves Chinese? It may be that nobody who was Chinese called themselves yellow, but the usual suspects, according to me, talking about my suspicions, the white supremacists. They said they called people who other people might call indigenous Asians red. Red man, red skins. Because you're talking about skin color. So who are the suspects then? The white supremacists. See, they put words out here, including the word that black people, many black people, that the lady that called in some months ago, or weeks, whatever it was,
it was
on
a couple
this program ago, and said MF. And she was saying it like it was something to be proud of. But she didn't invent that. I don't think, using logic, because I heard that term was used probably before she was born. So when she came into the world, somebody said, say this. And you'll find people getting upset about it or getting mad about it if you're calling them in the form of a name or whatever. But a question is, did you invent that term, lady? Well, you want people to be proud of it? I guess pride usually comes from something that you do. Mm-hmm. Well, I borrowed it from somebody and I liked it, so now I'm taking pride in using it.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
If I say, well, I just got one question. Does it produce a constructive result? Mm-hmm. And then I have follow-up questions after you answer that first question. What is that constructive result? Mm-hmm. See, I might have 2 or 3 dozen questions now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
But the bottom line is, what does it produce a constructive result? That's the main thing I want to know, right out the gate.
Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, when I spoke to her, and then it's in her book, the ISIS papers, she addressed that term in there.
Yes.
Very, very good. Speaking about addressing the term, let me do this. Let me break it, our final break of the day. You are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, and we thank you so much for all of your calls, all of your concerns, your Gmails, and your statements. Trust me, they all are good. Trust me, they all are good. Thank you. And we thank Mr. Fuller for that, too. Now, in our remaining 29 minutes, and we're going to get to you, Tess. Hey, Helen B., you're going to stay on for the remaining time. For those who are just getting into the program and you haven't called SWA, call this number, 516-453-9921. And press the number 1 button if you have a question for Mr. Fuller to address. Or you can just listen. You can just listen. That's good, too, because we're all still learning. All righty. All right. And if you're a new caller, you call that same number, and then you press the number 1 button, give the call screener your name so that I can properly give you an introduction. And then you can do your thing. Chat room is available. The chatters have been outstanding today because they didn't take the bait. And I'm so proud of you. They know what I'm talking about. You did real good. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. When you do that, then you want to click on where it says programs, and then you click that, and the window for the shows opens up. And then once you click that, then the final window, Produce Justice show comes up, and then that window allows you to get into the window for the chat room, and you can get in there and see what's going on. Some very compelling conversations in there. Very, very good. And occasionally I will lift something out of the chat room, and most of the chat room people know that I will not ask Mr. Fuller a question that they may have to ask him, but I will occasionally take a comment from the chat room and give the person who made the comment the proper address and have Mr. Fuller speak to that, and then we can go on from there. Yeah. Okay, and then, of course, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, MRBOBBY @gmail.com, and it will probably not be read today, but it will be read at a certain time, and I will give you the heads up when it's happening so you can hear yourself or hear your question and all that kind of thing. Okay. Oh, yeah, and lastly, listen. All the books are available by going to producejustice.com. That is producejustice.com. 171 and 172. Outstanding. That's in the book. That's in the book that Mr. Fuller has written, and he refers to it all the time. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan on doing it? But mostly, what is the constructive result of that? Constructive result. Wow. All right, anyway, just had a little thing on that. Let's go to Tess. Tess in New York. Here we go. All righty, Tess. You're in. Oh, it says Tess, but anyway. Tess in New York, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Good morning. I was wondering along the lines of...
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes, sir. I was wondering along the lines of the audiobook, Mr. Fuller, do you plan on translating the book to any other languages? Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. I'd like for the book or the contents to be everywhere. That's the whole purpose for writing a book. For the words in that book to be in people's minds, which is where it's supposed to go. That's the repository for communication, the minds, and see what they think. think about what? How to solve the race problem. That's what my book is about. And presumably replacing it, not only solving the race problem or erasing the race problem, abolishing it, but replacing it with what? Under the law of compensation. If you move something, you should replace it with something better. Otherwise, what's the point in moving it? That's the theory. And I think that's the universal law.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And if you take something away, you should replace it with something better. Now, the logical replacement for the system of white supremacy, which is a system of non-justice, with a system of what? Justice. And what is a system of racism? It's a system of non-justice. And what is a system of non-justice, if you're going to replace it? A system of justice. So what is justice? These are questions and answers now. Justice is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's number one. And number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. It's never been done in recorded history. May have been done in pre-recorded history, but there's no recorded history of any people, many people who will say proud people, who guaranteed that no person was mistreated and who guaranteed that the person that needed help the most got that most constructive help. There is no people nowhere. That's why people shouldn't be walking around with their chest stuck out about nothing. Because in every society, in recorded history, somebody was being mistreated. Sometime. And in recorded history, there were plenty of people who needed constructive help that didn't get it. But it's possible to do that. That's the theory. But it's never been proven in recorded history. But it's one thing for sure. You cannot get justice in a system of white supremacy. That's impossible.
It's impossible.
Why? Because white supremacy is dedicated to mistreating people. It's guaranteed to produce non-justice, not justice. That's not going to happen. Why? Because the system of white supremacy is guaranteed to mistreat people based on the color of their skin. That's what it's for. And to gain what for whom? To the people who practice it. White people classified as white, who benefit in all 9 areas of activity through that mistreatment system. The 9 areas meaning economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. That's what the system of white supremacy is set up to do. Mistreat people who have color in their skin in all of those 9 areas of activity, 24/7, everywhere in the known universe where white supremacy exists.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Tess. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to Canada and Boo. Get ready, Boo. Okay, wait a minute. There we go. Boo, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. So I have two questions. Hopefully you can answer both of my questions. But if not, maybe next week. The first question is about entitlement to the world. I noticed that white racists, white supremacists, and even white people have a certain level of entitlement to the world. We've talked about this idea that, they can go anywhere in the world and they have a code. And even the indigenous of that part of the world, the natives, will sort of like respect white people because, I guess, of that entitlement. So should we, as black people, walk around with a sense of entitlement to Earth, this planet, because we've been put on this planet? Now, entitlement does not mean violence or, being inconsiderate, but just the sense of I belong and I have a right to be here or any space. So that's the question. Should we also have an entitlement?
Hey, Boo.
Yeah.
Boo.
Okay.
Let me ask you like this. Your question is very good, but can you make it concise so that Mr. Fuller can answer your specific question?
Okay.
And then we'll go to your second one. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Should we feel the same entitlement to this planet as the white races?
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Should the victims of white supremacy get the same entitlements as the white supremacists are entitled to on this planet? Is that what you're asking?
Correct, yes.
All people, including the victims of white supremacy, are entitled to justice. Otherwise, it's not justice. And justice is what? That's what the poker should be. All people are entitled to get a thing called justice. And that is, you're entitled to be guaranteed that you will not be mistreated by anybody, anywhere, at any time. That's number one. And number two, it's just two parts to it, to a thing called justice. You're entitled to get the help that you need at all times in everything that you are doing, as long as what you are doing is constructive and not non-constructive. All people, all creatures are entitled to that, people particularly. And then we'll sort out about animals and insects and things like that and get that in order. Because there's a suspicion, and I have that suspicion, based on logic, that when people, who are the most intelligent, you might say, creatures in the known universe, got out of order themselves, they made all other creatures out of order. So the other creatures fight each other, kill each other. Now, it may not be, that's a theory. But it may have started out that most people, or rather all people, and all creatures, from the very beginning, were rotten. They were seriously flawed. But many people, according to their religions, and in, say, for example, the Christian religion, they say, no, everything was in harmony when it started out. But there was something about the people the first two people in the Christian religion were Adam and Eve, and they were flawed from the beginning. That's what I was taught. And these flaws came to the surface and have been here ever since.
Mm-hmm.
But people can get rid of their flaws by instructions that people say you will find in a book called the Holy Bible, written in many languages. And then there are other people who say, well, that book is okay, but it's not, it's a lot of things it doesn't cover. So that's why you have a lot of different religions. Christian religion, up to a point, says that this is the complete book, this is everything. This is the only book you really need when you want to straighten something out. And then some people say, well, there were some things that were kind of overlooked. And what was overlooked is covered in another book called the Quran. And then there are other people who say the writings of somebody named Confucius. And then on and on and on and on. So it comes down to what do you want to believe? What do you think makes the most sense? And stick with it. At the time that you come to that conclusion, you meaning whomever you are.
Okay.
But try not to fight about it or shout somebody down and keep them from saying whatever they have to say. Because nobody has solved the problem of having a world of justice. We're in a world that is totally out of balance. And the biggest problem right now in 2023, in the form of one person like myself, that's why I'm doing it. Different people got their different views. I'm saying the biggest problem, obstacle, the biggest thing in the way is a system of government called the system of white supremacy that needs to be replaced as compensation with a system of justice.
All righty.
That's a system of non-justice.
Yes, sir.
It needs to be replaced with a system of justice.
All righty.
That's what this program is about, and the book associated with the program. And it's not to replace the Bible or the Quran or any of the holy books that people say are holy books. It's not to replace that at all. It's just a supplement and to help us along toward making the world the way it should be.
All right.
Hopefully.
Okay. All right, Boo. Very quickly. What is your second question?
My second question is: if you have had deep conversations about the system of white supremacy and justice with, have you had those conversations with white people, and what's on the other side of those conversations? Because I find that white supremacist white people, they get angry. So in your situations, Mr. Fuller, what do you do when you reach that point?
You ask questions. Ask the white people. Are you angry? And don't move to the second question until that first question is asked. Answered, rather. Don't move to the second question. And the first question should be, if you perceive that the person is getting angry. Now, this is code. Sir, ma'am, and always be polite. Are you angry? That's the first question, logical question. Always follow the logic.
Yes.
Always be in sequence. And don't move to the second question until the first question is answered to your satisfaction. Otherwise, it's not an answer. You may not understand the question. If the person may not understand the question. You can ask them, do you understand my question, sir? Why are you angry? And wait for the answer.
And
don't try to break into. Yeah, don't try to make a sermon while they're trying to answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Most people have a tendency to do that, including myself. That's just a tendency. You don't wait for the person to answer. You start trying to answer the question yourself for the person. That's not the procedure. That's not code.
That's not
wait
code.
Wait for the answer. And then even to make sure you can, after the person gives you an answer, you can, if you're not sure, you can say, what? You can say, is that your answer? Sir, ma'am, to make sure that they were not finished. And they might say, none of your business.
I could say that.
Then that calls for another question.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it not my business?
Okay.
It's an answer to that question.
And that's the codified response. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's the codified response.
Okay.
So you want to know why about everything. That's an important question. Why is an important question?
Yes. All right. Thank you, Boo, from Canada. Let's quickly go to Indarkin Nexus from Oklahoma. You're on with Mr. Fuller in the remaining moments. What is your question for Mr. Fuller? Come on, you're on with
How can the conclusion of all conclusions be reached as long as non-white people validate the authority of the white supremacists?
Well, any white person, and this is in connection with what the previous caller was about. I don't know until I talk to a white person about my book and what it said and about my whole concept. I have never talked to a white person ever. Simply because no white person has ever approached me and asked me anything about what I've written, which I find strange. I've seen white people attack black people and whatnot. I haven't even heard secondhand information about anything that Neely Fuller has ever said or written. Ever. And I've been out here, going back to the 1950s. I've heard them say a whole bunch of things about what Martin Luther King said. White people have come and sat in the audience and heard me and come down afterwards, a few of them, very few, I can probably count them on one hand, and say what you're saying is very interesting, and walk out. No challenge, no nothing. Except one time, now that I think about it, yes, one time, a person called me a name. That was in New York City, back in the early 1990s. I was making a presentation of what I've written, just like I'm doing now, and two people ran down the aisle toward me, two white males, and they said, "You are homophobic." And I beckoned for them to come forward, because that's what the code calls for me to do. Come forward and make your case. Make your case. You call me by a title. I'm going to see if I fit that title. And everybody will know that's in this room about Neely Fuller and whether or not, after the questions and answers come, Neely Fuller is something called, quote, unquote, homophobic. So come down and make your case. I beckoned for them to come down. They scrambled up the aisle and ran out of the place.
Yep, that's what you said. Mm-hmm. Already.
And so, as far as somebody asking about that question about white people making challenges and all like that, no, not where I could get a conversation going. I'm willing. The code calls for me to have a conversation, particularly when somebody puts a label on you. You put any kind of label on Neely Fuller. Neely Fuller got a whole lot of questions, maybe about 10,000 of them. I don't know how many there's going to be. But it's all open-ended now. You put that label on me, I call myself a victim of white supremacy. Nobody challenges me on that. They'll say, I don't call myself no victim. I said, well, I wasn't talking about you. You have to make that decision.
Absolutely. Let's go to Victor from Canada. Victor, what is your question quickly for Mr. Fuller?
Oh, hi, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. I just wanted to. There was a gentleman before that called. His name is Boo. He's in Canada, almost in Canada. Mr. Fuller, does it make? I guess the question is, are there white racists? And I have another question.
Oh, the question is, are there white racists?
Yeah, because the young gentleman called and said that there's white racists. From my understanding, the only form of racism is white supremacy, and the people who practice racism are classified as white. So he made the statement about white racists.
Yes.
So,
in answer to the question, are there white racists? In order to be a racist, you have, in the system of white supremacy, you have to be white. I mean, that's an intention. Hey, white people who are white supremacists brag about it. Very few have in the past, but very few do now. Very few white people say, I am a racist. They'll say, oh, no, I'm not a racist. I'm a white nationalist. So all you have to do is just ask a question. What's that? What's the purpose of being a white nationalist? Now, the floor is open for about 10,000 questions, just on that alone. Unlimited questions. Mm-hmm. What is a white nationalist? That's what they handed you, so you want an explanation of what that. What does a white nationalist do? That's another question. And don't move to the second question without taking care of that first one. That's codified law on everything. If you got 5 questions, you don't move the question number 2 out of that 5 without completely covering. Getting a correct answer. Because in everything that's going to be said, there's a correct answer.
Yes,
sir. To that first question.
Sorry about this, Victor, but we're going to have to go because we are out of time, so you need to call back next week. Thank you for your call. All right, Mr. Fuller, well, we have come to the conclusion of the program. So we'd like to thank everybody for listening. Forgive us for the mistakes that we made today, because we did, or I know I did. We'll try to do better next week. Mr. Fuller, give you the last word before we close it out.
Produce constructive results in everything that you say or do to the best of your ability. Produce constructive results. Because that's what we're all put here to do, according to correct logic.
Okay. Everybody have a good week. We hopefully will talk to you next week. Thank you for listening. Bye.
you.